Magalhael to Stokes, who's onside. 1-0.
Here's Sims. It's a good serve this from Southampton. They could finish the job here. It's Shane Long, and he has done it. Just a minute to play. That's stoppage time. Here's Letizia. Who better to say farewell than one of the finest players ever to wear the red and white.
Welcome to another episode of the Saints FC podcast. Once again, I am delighted to have on the line, using virtual internet telephone calling software, Mr. Tom Parker. Tom, how the devil are you?
I'm really good, John. How are you?
Yeah, I loved the enthusiasm with your response there, Tom. It didn't sound trite at all.
Well, I try my best.
Yeah. I'm feeling okay. You know, I think it's 3 games we've had since we last spoke. We've had a win, a loss, and a draw. So things could be better. Things could be significantly worse. So, you know, how else can you feel? It's kind of like good to middling, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think particularly, I mean, obviously we're speaking now the night after the Watford game, which we'll no doubt go into, but I think has given everyone a real lift, particularly with the Spurs result, and we know now that it's very much in our hands. So yeah, I think we can be as optimistic as we have been able to be for at least for the whole season. Yeah,
pretty much. Should we just should we just go through this chronologically?
Let's start at the beginning. It's always good.
Yeah, so cast your mind back, ladies and gentlemen, to Saturday the 13th of April, when we were, you know, at least another 11 or so days younger than we are today. And we had Southampton versus Wolverhampton Wanderers. And I suppose probably the surprise thing, the first kind of real surprise, was that Josh Sims was starting.
Yeah, it's something that we've called for quite some time. I think I've got a few more things to say about it later on, but he seems to have forced his way back in, obviously after coming back from that loan at Reading. And I think one of the things he does give you is he moves the ball forward very quickly, and he did that very quickly indeed against Wolves.
I mean, it was so quickly, in fact, that he managed to create an assist for Nathan Redmond within 2 minutes of starting the game. Now, I mean, I can't really remember any Saints. I mean, when was the last time we scored an early goal? I mean, did we do early goals? I'm not sure.
I think that was the earliest goal we'd scored since Van Dijk scored for us against Spurs.
Wow,
that at the time, so that was a good couple of years ago. We're not really fast starters, are we?
No, I'd have wondered as well. Do you remember when he got that assist for Charlie Austin against Everton?
Yeah, against Everton. That was like 48 seconds or something.
Yeah, that was pretty quick as well. So I mean that was like a brilliantly positive start. Great bit of movement from Josh Sims. Found Nathan Redmond, and then Nathan Redmond afterwards said, you know, him and Josh Sims had a little chat beforehand, and he said, you know, if you surge forward and you put the ball in, if we don't get that, that's our problem. You're doing your job. So Josh Sims surges forward, puts the ball into that spot, and Nathan Redmond is there, and there we are, 1-0.
But he's not just there as well, John, because he wasn't even there. It's the movement that makes the goal, isn't it? It's the sort of, it's what everyone's been wanting Nathan Redmond to do, which he finally appears to be doing, is having that confidence just to be so much more direct and so much more assertive and attack the near post, and totally took the defence by surprise.
Yeah, it's funny, you know, Nathan Redmond looks like he's becoming almost like a clinical finisher in a weird way, and you just think he couldn't kind of hit a barn door when he was playing under Hughes. I mean, so much effort and gusto, and you couldn't really fault him in Southampton against Hughes, apart from the fact that he just wasn't. They weren't going in.
But no one's was going in. either.
Yeah.
It wasn't like he was the bad egg. Like no one had confidence. Everyone looked devoid of belief and spirit. And all praise to Ralph for sort of getting him and sort of roughing up a little bit, but also putting his arm around his shoulder. And if you think about it, he's actually the main man, isn't he? He's the man that everything goes through for Saints, because Ings can't be guaranteed to start every game. So everything really, they get the ball, they look up and they try and find Redmond.
Yeah, and I think we saw that again against the game against Watford this week, but which we'll get onto a little bit later on. Interesting game, I think Southampton started really positively, had a good few chances, but then Wolves managed to get one back through Bolly. And you might have worried at this point, and I don't really want to dwell on the Wolves goal, but
it's a good header.
It was a good header. How often do we get beaten by headers? Let's not get into that. We'll
Yeah.
have a chance to speak about that later on as well. But then the thing that really pleased me was how quickly Saints reacted to it. I mean, how many times have we been watching Saints and we've scored a goal? It's been like a really important goal, like an equaliser or something like that. And then bang, immediately the opposition kind of get one back moments later. It was so good to do it the other way round.
Yeah, and what a clever, brilliant goal was. If that had been a goal, De Bruyne onto Aguero, everyone would have, or Pogba onto Rashford, everyone would be raving about it, wouldn't they? Like, oh, great no-look pass, and then a dinked finish. Everyone, what a great finish. And it was a brilliant goal. And again, it shows the confidence, doesn't it? Like, how many times last year and, in the start of this season, did we see Nathan Redmond just smash, just put his laces through it?
Yeah.
And wayward, followed by head in the hands. It's not though. It's so much more controlled, and that it's got to be confidence.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, what is it, kind of 7 goals he's had now under Ralph Hasenhüttl, despite, the fact I didn't think he even got a single goal when he was playing for Mark Hughes, did he?
He did. He got the one, it was most frustrating game away at Everton.
Oh, yes, you're right, yeah.
And he's got 8. He's got 8 now.
8
but,
now.
yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it would be hard to say that he's a changed man, because he was putting in loads of effort and we were seeing everything but the goals under Hughes. But it's so nice to have the end product now as well, isn't it?
Yeah. And also, he is a player that I think scares opposition, because you just don't know what he's going to do. His close control is exceptional. His pace is he's as fast as anyone in the league, and he's direct. And I think that Saints have got a problem on their hands now almost with Redmond, because other teams are going to look at that and go, well, can we make him 5% better? Can we add 4 more goals a season on top of what he's getting now? Because if they do, all of a sudden then he's in double figures, and that makes him quite a hot commodity.
Well, I mean, it's funny because if we go on to then Saints' second scorer in the game, which was Shane Long, who got the third after he came on a little bit later on. And he's another player who has now suddenly found his scoring boots. And actually, if you had Shane Long and Nathan Redmond both getting in with, like 10 to 12 goals a season, that's just really effective as well. And then, if you then look across and say maybe we get a handful from Ward-Prowse, handful from Højbjerg, a few from maybe Sims and Armstrong, that is almost more exciting, I think, than having an out-and-out striker who's banging in 20 and you're totally reliant on. Because if you have all those kind of different players surging forward, all able to score goals, surely that's a much more worrying prospect for an opposition defence. They don't know who to mark. They're worried about everyone.
Yeah, and if you think one of the criticisms of Saints over the last few years has been the lack of, it's the lack of goals, but one of the main things that's contributed to that has been the lack of goals from midfield. If you look at this season, Ward-Prowse with 6, Armstrong with 4, Højbjerg with 4. I don't know the numbers here, but in previous years, maybe Tadic aside, and you could argue Tadic, sort of inside forward, we weren't really getting the goals from midfield, and now it's coming good, and it does mean that you can have a Redmond, you can have an Ings that have got 8 each, and we're not always being outscored. Certainly not second half of the season.
Yeah, and it's just great to get the 3 points at St Mary's. I think after our last conversation, we scared a couple of our listeners. I know Edward Marsh tweeted about he was worried after we went through all of Cardiff's fixtures and picked out all their winnable games and then went through ours. But that victory against Wolves, it doesn't make us safe, but after that game, how are you feeling?
I'm still not set. Well, I still didn't feel too confident.
Really?
I just because it's still, until it's mathematically done, you can't take anything for granted. And if you look back to what the table looked like after that game against Wolves, it was still far from over. Particularly with Bournemouth, with Brighton obviously losing a lot, but not quite. They were only 3 points off us at that point, and all right, it was 8 points between us and Cardiff. But Saints anything can happen. Anything could happen with Saints, is what I would say.
Okay, well, should we move on from Wolves? I think I may have an email here actually from Toby Burnell, which is an interesting one. So he was excited by Jack Stevens coming into the game. So he came on as a substitute for Jan Valery, I think, went off. I don't know if he was injured or if it was a tactical substitution. But also mentioned about Stevens being in right back for the last part of the game, that he made the most of it, got up the pitch, even took on some Wolves defenders, and Toby seems to remember at least one important tackle, and then goes on to ask the question, do you think Stevens' constant omission from the squad are just? He also says thanks and keep up the good work on the podcast. So thank you, Toby.
Well, if you look, we've got to play, 3 at the back in terms of centre-backs. Someone has to lose out. The problem with Stevens is I think he, like a lot of our players, I'd put Mario Lemina in this category. He can look brilliant, but then the next thing, he can put the whole team in trouble. And I think with Stevens, he is a bit like Yoshida a few years ago and Højbjerg before that. Stevens always seems to have a mistake in him. And, for a centre-back, he's not particularly good in the air. And he doesn't, and whilst Yoshida isn't particularly good in the air, Yoshida kind of has a knack of being where the ball drops.
Yeah.
And making those clearances, and Stevens doesn't do that. So if you think that, you can't drop Bednarek, because he's, probably our best defender. You're not going to drop Vestergaard because he gives you so much in the air. Then if you look at it, who are you going to choose? You're going to choose the guy who's played in World Cups, who's experienced, who's got hundreds of Premier League games under his belt, or are you going to choose Stevens? And I think Stevens kind of misses out. And there's a bigger debate about if we're going to really push on. Players that make mistakes. And if you look, we have got players that make individual errors. I'd put Romeo in that camp. In terms of the number of fouls, the number of times he loses the ball. We've got to maybe look at those players that make individual errors and put the team under pressure, because we're not a team that can handle pressure. So we need to do everything we can to not put ourselves under it.
Yeah. Okay. So that's kind of probably don't quite agree with you, Toby, on Jack Stevens. Thank you very much for the comments there. It is interesting. I live in Plymouth, or near to Plymouth now, as you know, Tom, and Jack Stevens is although we chant he's one of our own, it came through the kind of Plymouth Academy and stuff like that. And so people ask me about Jack Stevens all the time. They're really quite fond of him, but I do have that kind of awkward answer back of like, well, he's shown sometimes he's been good, sometimes he's also been pretty worrying as well. But I think Stevens isn't really a centre back. I think Stevens is very good on the ball, and he's actually quite good at going past people. So I'd give him a go. Forward, definitely.
I'd put him in almost like in the Romeo mould. You can turn Stevens from a sort of jobbing Premier League centre back into a pretty good defensive midfielder, I'd say. Yeah,
I wonder why nobody's tried that with him.
I don't know. But the problem is, isn't it? I guess the game is so fast and the risks are so great, particularly with Saints. Every point matters, and they can't sort of maybe just take a chance. But then Ralph seems to be a brave guy. If you can turn Redmond into a world beater, then who knows what can happen.
Right. So then we head up north, up to the Tyneside and Newcastle United. This game last season was the end of Pellegrino, wasn't it?
So what was the score last season? I remember we drew 2-2 at home, didn't we, against them? And Gabbiadini scored twice.
We did. Even that was quite disappointing.
Yeah.
I think this one was 3-0, if I remember correctly.
I think it was, and this was where Saints just kind of gave up, didn't they?
Yeah.
This was when like it just looked really dark.
Yeah. I think Kennedy kind of had 2 goals, didn't he?
And Kennedy scored super early on, didn't he?
Yeah, second minute, once again. And we were in awful position at that point. I think just hovering above the relegation zone. And that was the performance which did for Pellegrino. And I remember he kind of came out afterwards and actually said his players gave up in the match. And I think maybe at that point the board just went, well, we give up as well then.
Yeah, it was pretty abject. It's a difficult place to go, as we learned last week.
But so I mean, once again, we go to Newcastle, we lose the game, we concede 3 goals. What's the difference between Pellegrino's 3-0 loss to Newcastle, which was so woeful that the manager got the sack, and the relatively kind of, I wouldn't say people were positive about the result against Newcastle, but people weren't so down on it this time, were they?
Well, I think there's a few things, isn't it? I think Newcastle are a good team. I think people recognise that. They're probably better than I hate when people say it's probably a bit better than what their league position says. They are very strong at home. That was their 6th win in 7 home games. And they just kind of wanted it more. And you've got to remember as well, with Pellegrino, that was the sort of the icing on the cake, the sort of pinnacle or nadir, depending on your way of looking at it, of terrible Pellegrino management. Whereas I think now with Ralph, people look at it and they say, well, this isn't the way it has to be. We're not going to win every game, but we're definitely not going to lose every game. And particularly, they came out in the second half and Saints played really well. So, and Ralph made a positive change that affected the game. And how many times in the Pellegrino era could you say that the manager made a positive change that affected the game?
Yeah, I mean, probably hardly any at all. And, we were 2-0 down in this game by half-time. Jack Stevens, the aforementioned, got substituted off at half-time, that positive substitution for Lamina, who had a pretty quick impact. He got a goal, I think, it wasn't that early on, but on the hour mark.
Yeah, about 10-15 minutes.
Yeah. But you're right, at that point it really felt like we were properly back in it, and then we had a few other good chances. All of them seemed to fall to Maya Yoshida.
Yeah, he had 2 really good chances, didn't he?
Yeah, I think actually, if you look back at the whole game, he could have potentially had a hat trick, which I mean, you don't really want your hat trick of chances to fall to Maya Yoshida. I mean, not that he's shy of scoring goals. I have seen him score on quite a few occasions, but it's not the same as having, those chances falling to one of our forward players, is it?
No, I think, and also by that time you kind of felt the game had sort of passed us by. Saints didn't really start, did they? Sort of about half an hour. I think kind of 2-0 down was the wake-up call. Because we were just torn apart by them. They kind of out-Saintsed us. Yeah, they out-fought us. They were more aggressive. They won every second ball. If they didn't win it, they made sure that we couldn't do anything with it. And I don't know about from what it looked like from where you were, John, but it just looked like we were a bit shell-shocked by it all.
Yeah, I think we were a little bit surprised. I mean, I don't know whether it was the kind of lineup. I mean, we started with Sims again. He didn't have a particularly great game against Newcastle, and we substituted at half-time for Armstrong. Along with Stevens as well. So it's a double substitution. I think with Armstrong and Lamina on, we had a bit more bite and a bit more going forward.
Yeah, and a bit more. I think with Sims, Sims is a funny one, isn't he? Because I love Josh Sims. We've been banging on about him for ages getting a chance in the team. But I think over the last sort of 3 games, you've seen sort of the best and worst of Josh Sims. You've seen like great direct running. You've seen, real ability to make a difference in a game, but also, he, maybe a bit like Valerie when Valerie started out this season. Just there's a little bit of naivety, and I think, it is costing us a little bit, particularly, against Watford, where, you get the ball, manage to release Sims, and either it wouldn't quite go right for him, or he'd try and get a foul and he didn't get it. And yeah, against Newcastle, it just didn't really work at all.
No. Second half much better, but then as soon as Newcastle got their third, it was really game over. Saints searching for an equaliser didn't come, and then that's it. And I think probably overall you've got to say that the better team won.
Yeah, Saints. I mean, it would have been a bit outrageous if we'd have managed to get anything out of that game. I mean, if you think we could really probably have been down to 10 men and 2-0 down at half time. How James Ward-Prowse, which was another, we spoke before about the Crystal Palace game and the sort of how James Ward-Prowse is getting an edge to him, and how we love the James Ward-Prowse edge now. But if you think it was a great professional foul, it's like 6 yards into his own half, into the opposition half. So not quite a professional foul, but definitely a professional foul, and also a free kick far too far away from the goal for anyone to do anything with it, and only a booking. So all in all, great bit of play from James Ward-Prowse.
Yeah, and then obviously we have the game against Watford, which was last night, and while we held out such a long time before we started recording this podcast, this game was just great fun right from the absolute off.
Yeah, it's a shame it wasn't like a Super Sunday, like it said that, or a Friday night game said that neutrals would have watched it, because it was brilliant. And you hear a lot about Premier League's best league in the world, no league like it. But if you think that was 7th, taking on fifth from bottom, and the quality I thought was brilliant. A mate of mine who's a Watford fan said they weren't very good, but I thought Watford were excellent. And I thought just the quality, that the close control, the one-touch football, the pace, the energy, the directness. These teams are 34 games into the season. Watford even more than that because of their long FA Cup run. I thought they were both brilliant, I have to say.
Yeah, really, really fantastically exciting game. Thankfully, I managed to actually sit down on my sofa and get the game on before the kickoff, pretty much just as the kickoff was happening, and I couldn't quite believe my eyes.
It was really weird because I had some weird stream at home, and it didn't have the sound. The sound was behind where the screen, the video was. And I watched him do it. And then I thought, it must be like they must have gone to take the kickoff. They've taken the kickoff wrong. And Shane Long's just gone down and chipped past goalkeeper for a laugh. It was also weird. But also, it's like, that's what Shane Long's been doing his entire career. And centre-backs, even like experienced centre-backs, are like, oh no, I'll just give myself a little bit extra time. Like, it's Shane Long. Just get the ball as far away from you as you can. Yeah.
Really, really quick. 7.69 seconds, which, as we all know, is now a Premier League record. Do you want to hear who Shane Long has knocked off the top spot?
Please do tell.
It's Ledley King.
Famous goalscorer.
Yeah. Who scored for Spurs against Bradford City back in the year 2001 season. That was 9 seconds, 0.82. So, I mean, Shane Long has taken a good 2.2 seconds off Ledley King there. I mean, that's got to hurt, hasn't it?
What a great goal. Everything, like, there's no one else involved in that goal apart from Shane Long. And he made it all himself. And also then, again, like we spoke about Redmond's finish, what a beautiful little dink. Just a really clever finish.
It was a really, really good chip. I actually think it was better than Redmond's chip, because it just all happened so quickly. There's been loads of like wonderful comparisons. I think Michael Cox, who we had on the podcast last season, said he did that quicker than, or like in half the speed that the note is held by. Oh God, I'm going to get this totally wrong now. Did it quicker than Lou Reed holds a note on one of his songs. Like you think about holding a note, Shane Long can score a goal in that time. Quicker than Usain Bolt can run 100 metres.
That's true. That's the big one.
Yeah. That's quite impressive. I mean, how long is half a football pitch?
I don't know.
It's like 50 metres maybe?
It's got to be. It's big. I mean, he just, we talk about
I'm going to
players
look
that
up
look.
the dimensions now. Tom.
Yeah, do that. I mean, we talk about players that look revitalised. Shane Long, is not a scorer of, a great number of goals, but he scores important goals. And, goal to seal the win against Wolves, important goal, against Watford. Shane, good goal against Liverpool. Shane Long's back, baby.
Yeah. Three goals in 4 games, isn't it?
It is 3 goals in 4 games. And
Including
also,
some substitute appearances there.
he's kind of forced Ings out a little bit. Ings isn't necessarily guaranteed to start. I think, we can talk about the Watford game, and I think Ralph sort of keeps making little tactical errors towards the end of games, which is ridiculous for me to say that, but I think he does, and I think he needs to think about, because we can't just keep giving the ball away and it keep coming back at us. But Shane Long, there's no reason why Shane Long won't start on Saturday against Bournemouth.
No, I think you probably have him over Ings at the moment on current form.
Yeah.
Tom, good news is football length of a half is about 50 metres. Because it's got to be between 90 and 120 metres, the full length of the pitch. So, half of that. Probably 50 metres. So he's run half the distance of Usain Bolt, but done a lovely chip and won the ball, all in that time.
Yeah, and also just does that sort of great Shane Long finish, the Shane Long celebration where he runs away sort of looking a bit surprised that he scored.
Okay, Tom, here's a little quiz for you. Can you name the next fastest Southampton Premier League goal scorer?
Oh, God. Matty?
Not Matty. Similar era, a little bit later, but played with Matty for a little bit.
Beat?
It is James Beattie against Chelsea at Stamford Bridge, 13.52 seconds.
Wowzers!
Which is only, hang on, the 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9th fastest Premier League goal.
So we've got 2 of the top 10 fastest goals.
We've got 2 of the top 10. Yeah.
Amazing.
Shane Long, Ledley King, Alan Shearer for Newcastle, Christian Eriksen, 10 seconds against Man United. That's quite good, isn't it? Mark Viduka, you remember him? Dwight York, Chris Sutton, Kevin Nolan, then James Beattie, and then Asmir Begovic against Southampton.
That's the goalkeeper, wasn't it? That was a horrible day.
Yeah. It's shocking, isn't it?
Yeah, that was terrible. Was that the holy goalkeeper that let that in, Arthur? I think it was, wasn't it?
Oh, maybe. Let's not go over old ground like that.
No, we don't need to. We've moved on now.
Yeah. What do we say about this game against Watford? I mean, it was thrilling. It's funny that during the whole kind of middle part of the match, the minutes from the 2nd minute through to the 89th minute, didn't see another goal. Although they saw loads and loads of great kind of end-to-end action, fantastic chances, brilliant moves, fantastic, movement from both teams, fantastic kind of build-up play from both teams, a couple of dodgy refereeing decisions thrown in, half-time entertainment involving John Barnes and Elton Johns and the World in Motion rap. The game had it all, didn't it?
Yeah, it was. It just seemed to really flow, and also both teams went full pelt, which I loved. You saw Højbjerg, Ward-Prowse flying into challenges against men sort of 6 inches taller than him and coming away with the ball. Shane Long being an absolute nightmare, the ball sticking to Redmond's feet. There was so much I love about that game of football. I think it's actually one of the best games of football I've watched in years.
Really? Gosh.
Yeah, I just thought it was about the quality was so good. Bertram was great. It was all great.
Did you watch Tottenham Man City last week? Because that was also quite good.
I didn't see that, but I heard about it.
You've seen Saints Watford, so you don't need.
I've seen all the big stars.
Yeah. What I found quite interesting is Cathcart, what's his name? Is it Cathcart?
Cathcart,
Yeah. He was clearly shaken by Shane Long and kept on making chances. One of the things, though, which I was really kind of quite surprised by, that Decore had the absolute tenacity to try and score with his hand against us again.
Again, I know. It was so good. And also, he almost got away with it again, didn't he?
He nearly did, yeah.
No one called it, and he did the same thing where he sort of like, I'm going to handball it, but if I sort of crouch down, and put my head near my hand, no one will notice what I'm about to do, and he almost got away with it again.
Do you think it's just because he's like such a big beast that
he's very,
referees, they look at him, they can't see his limbs, they just see this kind of like enormous beast of a human being, kind of like charging.
He's an amazing athlete. I mean, but what's annoying as well is I think he got booked later on in the game. And, he would have been booked had that, for trying to score with your hand. I think you do generally get booked if you get caught. And again, it's as always, it's a game of what ifs. But, also, just another point, Watford weren't they? Like, did you think that? Like, Watford kicking people in the air a lot and all niggly horrible fouls? Or is that just me being sensitive?
I think it's a bit of both, perhaps. I think Watford were very aggressive, but I also think Southampton were really aggressive. I think James Ward-Prowse was tremendously aggressive. What it is that Ralph Hasenhüttl says to him before each game, I have no idea, but it seems to really kind of rile him up.
Yeah, we could do with another goal or two from James before the season's out. But there was one great bit in the second half where I think he ended up on the left-hand side of the pitch, Ward-Prowse, and I can't remember who it is. It might be someone like Decore. He just slams into Decore.
Yeah.
He almost like runs underneath Decore and comes out with the ball. And, it was just like, you just never would have seen that from James Ward-Prowse. I'm not talking a year ago. I'm talking like 4 months ago. You wouldn't have seen it. He's a man transformed.
That was quite curious with James Ward-Prowse because he obviously started in right back and then finished in left wing. And I wonder if this is almost kind of the worst thing for James Ward-Prowse at the moment, is that his versatility means that he's not getting that kind of position in the middle of the pitch. Because I think a few weeks ago when James Ward-Prowse was scoring and we were talking about him, we were kind of talking about him as the first name on the team sheet. But perhaps the problem is now we've got a few injuries, or Jan Valerie's been ill. He's kind of getting moved out of position. He's not having a chance to do what he was doing so well in the centre of midfield before. Yeah,
it's funny. It's funny really now because he's just sort of made that bit his own. I think he's benefited obviously from the lack of Mario Lemina, who you think is a very natural kind of Hasenhüttl player in terms of the sort of dynamism and the pace, skill on the ball, but also a bit of steel. But we do, the squad is a bit thin, isn't it, really? If you look outside of sort of the 5 midfielders that would regularly play, you're only a couple of injuries and suspensions away from, I don't know who'd actually come into that midfield. So, it can only be a good thing. But he has really stamped his authority on it. I was just looking there. The funny thing is, how many assists do you think James Ward-Prowse this season?
I don't know, 5.
None.
Gosh.
Single assist according to the BBC's website. I mean, I like to think I'm being charitable, but I like to think that's because, his balls into the box just cause chaos. And, if they don't get the goal directly off, it will get one after that. But just, I was very surprised by that.
Yeah, I'm quite surprised at that because, he does whip in decent crosses and quite a lot. I mean, how many assists does he normally get in a season? I don't know. Where do you find those sort of stats?
Yeah,
Tom?
I don't know. But some sort of nerd website, I guess. But he is just absolutely, it's more than that, isn't it? It's the goals, it's the chaos he causes with these incredible balls into the box. If you think about it, the goal against, Shane Long's goal against Wolves, that wasn't an assist for Ward-Prowse, but it's his ball into the box that causes the sort of panic that then leads to Shane Long being able to net from, just 3 yards out.
Yeah. Right, I've got his assist stats for the previous seasons. So last season, out of 30 games, he had 3 goals and 3 assists. and 3 yellow cards. Season before, 30 games, 4 goals, 4 assists and 4 yellow cards. Season before that, 33 games, 2 goals, 4 assists and 5 yellow cards. And 14-15, 25 games, 1 goal, 6 assists, no yellow cards, but 1 red card. Is due a red.
He's due a red. I remember that when he got sent off. It was such a strange thing. But also, I think one of the things that is interesting with Saints is we play 3 centre-backs, got a great delivery of the ball. When was the last time one of our centre-backs scored a goal from a corner?
Oh, mate. I can't even remember if we've done it this season, have we?
Was it Wesley Hoyt last season against West Brom, maybe?
Yeah, probably. Or Jack Stevens against West Brom.
Jack Stevens. Or, I don't know. I mean, I don't know. When I say scored a goal from a corner, I mean like cross in the box, centre-back heads it. Classic English goal.
Yeah.
Rather than sort of like ball bounces around a bit, comes back out, centre-back scores. Yeah, which he does love to do. But you know what I mean? Just interesting that. Just a weird dynamic. You think with Vestergaard, we'd have someone who could just steamroller everyone else, but it just doesn't seem to happen.
See, I think Vestergaard is waiting for a moment from 40 yards out, top corner screamer.
Balls on fire.
Hopefully in the game against Huddersfield on the end of the last day of the season, because I'm going to be there at St Mary's.
Oh, very jealous of that. Very jealous.
So 1-1. Great game of football. Really disappointed that Watford got the equaliser in the 90th minute. On the replays on the television, it showed that they were offside.
Yeah, I've not seen this yet.
I mean, it was kind of like, we are talking inches offside. It's not like a whole body offside. But, yeah, I mean, I wonder, are Watford there with these kind of late equalising goals at Vicarage Road just to kind of sell VAR to Southampton fans?
You think? I mean, Watford have sort of become a bit of a bogey team for us. Even though they don't actually often beat us, they often just feel that you get slightly cheeky, unjustified results. But to be fair, Saints should look to Watford and look at what they've done there in terms of, they don't have a huge budget. They managed to sell their sort of more well-known players every year, and they've managed to keep doing well. Yeah, I don't know. It was a really good game, but again, could they have gone down to 10 men at the very end? Possibly. Was their goal offside? Possibly. Was 1-1 a fair result? I'd say definitely.
Yeah. I mean, I think probably what's so exciting about that game is that you've got 2 young European managers that are doing kind of big things with smaller teams. Okay, obviously Hasenhüttl hasn't done tremendous things that have been noticed elsewhere outside of Southampton yet, but I think Saints fans can see the transformation happening pretty quickly. And I think, you look at Javi Gracia, you look at Ralph Hasenhüttl, you look at Espirito Santos at Wolverhampton Wanderers, it wouldn't surprise me if those 3 managers are going to be the ones that are going to be talked about next season as ones that could then potentially be snaffled up by whichever Big Six side is not doing as well as they were hoping to.
Well, I was
probably Man United on the
probably Man United. Yes, exactly. I was talking to a colleague today, and he was saying, "Yeah, I love it. Solskjaer's already out giving press conferences saying he's the right man for the job," which I absolutely love because he's been in that job permanently for about 4 weeks. But I guess, and this is the thing, when they gave him that job, I felt kind of a bit smug because I was worried that Pochettino would go to Man United, and I mean, this is kind of ridiculous, but Hasenhüttl would go to Spurs. It's never going to happen. Not yet. And now I'm just thinking again, I'm like, Christ, if they fire Solskjaer, then they're going to get Pochettino, and then we're going to end up losing Ralph. But I don't know, maybe it's a bit too early for Ralph to get one of those, I hate to say it, bigger jobs just yet.
Yeah, I don't think he's on the radar yet. I wouldn't have thought anyway. But also, I think, if you look at what Pochettino's doing at Tottenham, now they've got that stadium, there's a bit of momentum, they've got to their Champions League semi-final. I wouldn't be surprised if he wants to stay there a little bit longer. He seems like a man who almost relishes the challenge of not being given any new players, but just working with what he's got.
Yeah, or if anything, working with fewer players.
Yeah, as they all get injured. And
yeah, but I look now, I mean, if you look at the players he've got on loan, Could you see Carrillo coming in, a big lump like Carrillo coming back into that team? I don't think you can. Boufal, there's no doubting his talent, but its attitude is what matters. And by all accounts, Boufal stinks. Hoyt is clearly someone that Ralph doesn't fancy at all. So yeah, what do you we've got a lot of players out on loan, a lot of wages that we're probably still spending, but we need to get rid of those players.
Yeah. I mean, is now the right time to start talking about what we want in the summer, or should we save that for maybe in a couple of weeks' time?
We should save that when we know what we're going to be looking at, because it could be a difference between, which Premier League player, which Champions League player do we fancy, and that guy for Brentford in League One, he's been pretty tasty. So,
so I think, where does that leave us now? It leaves us in 16th position still. With 37 points. The all-important relegation rivals for that third and final spot, Brighton and Hove Albion, on 34 points. So they're 3 points behind us, but with a goal difference of minus 22 compared to our minus 17. And then we have Cardiff all the way down in 18th, currently occupying that relegation position with 31 points. So a full 6 points behind us, but their goal difference is atrocious, minus 35.
So they've got to get 18 goals.
Yeah.
To make up that point.
So
when are we going to do it? Do you think it's going to be Saturday?
It's got to be, hasn't it? Home to Bournemouth?
You'd think so.
Bournemouth are in rotten form as well, aren't they?
They are. They're in dire form. And also, Bournemouth are not, let's be, we always do this. Well, I always do this because I'm always ridiculously over-optimistic. But let's have a think. We beat Bournemouth. We're up to 40 points all of a sudden. There's 2 more games after that. West Ham, you're going to think of sort of, again, lost their way. Have lost 3 of the last 4 games, drawn the other one. We could get a result there, and then it's at home to Huddersfield. All I'm saying here, John, is that mid-table mediocrity is not beyond the realm of possibility here.
So you're predicting that Saints are going to win 3 out of 3?
Well, I don't know. You look at this game. I mean, you look now, like Huddersfield lost 5. Huddersfield are in dire straits, aren't they?
Yeah.
So you've got to think Saints have to win that. I don't know, but I just think that if we can let's beat Bournemouth. You've got to imagine if we beat Bournemouth, it's all over, surely.
Well, if we beat Bournemouth, we've got to be safe, because you're not going to see an 18-goal swing from Cardiff City.
And also Cardiff got some horrendous fixtures. They've got Man City or someone on the last day, or was that Brighton? So Cardiff have got Fulham away, home to Crystal Palace, and away at Man United.
The thing is, I think the away at Man United looked horrendous a few weeks ago, but now you look at it as eminently winnable, don't you?
But also, you look at it like who's going to care more about that game?
Yeah,
the bunch of fancy pants players playing for Man United, or the blokes that are probably paying for their Premier League futures at Cardiff.
Yeah. Although, I mean, will they be at that point, or will Brighton and Southampton already both be safe? Who knows? Panis could relegate them. Right, so let's have a look at our next fixtures. So we've got Bournemouth at home, West Ham United away, Huddersfield at home. Bournemouth this Saturday, feeling confident?
Yeah, I think there'll be a real feel-good factor at St Mary's on Saturday. I think Saints are going to be really up for it. I think they'll I hope they'll feel sort of sense of injustice after the Watford game, and that'll fire them up. And I think they'll know that if they can get past what is still a pretty good Bournemouth team, then that kind of seals it, doesn't it, really? Because if you think, if we win, that makes our goal difference better. Cardiff, have got I don't think it's an easy game against Fulham by any means. And also, what it's like if you've been relegated, you want to relegate other teams.
Yeah. Bring them down with you. Let them join the suffering.
So let's see. But I'm optimistic. I think Saints 2-0 Saturday.
Okay, which all but guarantees our survival. So by the time we head up to London, West Ham United, are you going to that game, Tom? Did you manage to persuade your dad to revisit the London Stadium after last year's disappointment?
No, not for that one. I think next. No, I think it's just too grim, isn't it?
So Tom, you're done for the season.
I am done for the season.
Oh,
New house and wedding has cleared me out, mate. Next season I'll be back on it.
Okay, and then we've got Saints versus Huddersfield on the final day of the season. I'll be heading down to Southampton, so hopefully I'll see some of you down there. Do give me a shout on Twitter at Saintsfcpodcast if you fancy saying hello, going for a drink before the game, anything like that. I think we're going to do it. Let's go for some listener emails. Jason Dickey.
Always a good start.
Hey John, crazy swing of emotions from Wolves to Newcastle. Wolves, we looked a bit more hungry, but more importantly, what has gotten into Shane Long, who says we need to buy more strikers when we have Longy? He's writing this before the Watford game, by the way. Newcastle game needs a bit more attention. There's a lot to learn from a loss. Losing 2 defenders clearly hurt us, and Newcastle are a bit more up for it. Although I'm encouraged by that match at some of our wins. The fact was that we were flat, outplayed in the first half, but Ralph Hasenhüttl quickly diagnosed the problem and decisively corrected it. Second half, we're unlucky to only pull one back. Poor Yoshida should have had a hat-trick. How amazing is that we have a manager who can see a problem and tactically address it on the fly, that he has coached the lads up enough to implement his changes. Awesome. I take huge comfort in that. Looking forward, I think we could still be a bit more comfortable if we had a cushion moment, but not panicking yet.
I'm going to disagree with Jason a little bit there, because I think if you watch, I think the problem is we have, everything is different from the Hughes and Pellegrino eras, except for this tendency that when we're winning, and we win games up, we go up in games a lot. I think it's 25 points now this season we've lost from winning positions. If we'd have kept those points, we'd have been in 7th place. We'd already have qualified for the Europa League. Now, one of the things, we saw at the Watford game is we have this tendency to sit back, and sometimes Ralph makes slightly unusual substitutions. So last night we saw when I think Shane Long came off and Valerie came on.
Yeah.
And it meant we were very lightweight up front against the big defenders of Watford, so we just couldn't keep the ball. And I would have liked to have seen, Danny Ings come on, hold that ball up, and try and alleviate the pressure.
I mean, that was an injury, wasn't it? But you're right. So we have the injury to Shane Long, but rather than making a positive substitution, Ralph makes a more defensive one, and then throws James Ward-Prowse up to the top left, doesn't he? Whereas I think maybe a fresh Danny Ings would have caused Watford enough problems that perhaps they wouldn't have been able to commit so many men forward. Yeah,
because if you look, they kind of we clear the ball and it just comes straight back at us, and we had no way of holding that ball up. And I think by that point Redmond was knackered. So I think it's all. I'm a huge, big, massive fan of Ralph, but I think one of the things he needs to address is this kind of. When we're 1-0 up, we need to. If we can't score 2, then we're going to need to close these games out. Yeah.
Another interesting email from Nick Hingston, who's picking up from our last episode and our discussion around the VAR and the Mo Salah goal, and whether his offside would have been ruled out by VAR or not, or whether that was something that the pundits who are Liverpool fans were thinking or not. But Nick's kind of opinion on VAR is. VAR is going to slow the game, but may also leave as many bad decisions or controversial outcomes if, as they'd said on the commentary was correct, that the Salah goal would have still counted despite the fact that he was offside.
Yeah, I mean, I just don't understand this. Salah, it would have still counted. Like, the man was offside.
Yeah.
We said it before, didn't we, about the whole, if you're not interfering with play, what are you doing on the pitch? But yeah, I just don't get it, and I do fear that you're going to end up with, it just seems to be very slow, doesn't it?
Yeah, my theory is that they're actually going to start to change the rules of football to suit VAR and to suit the television audience, right? So one of the reasons for that I think this is from next season they're obviously introducing VAR in the Premier League, but also the football laws are changing around the handball. So no longer are you going to have accidental handball being kind of considered okay. It's just going to be like if it hits your hand, it's a handball. So they're turning handball into a black and white thing. And the reason I think they're doing this is because then you can show a replay. If it hits a hand, it's handball. If it doesn't hit a hand, it's not handball. Whereas, using a replay to try and show some sort of intent is practically impossible. So my theory is that they are introducing that handball rule because they see a potential snag with the implementation of VAR. And I wonder if after a season of VAR and offsides and this sort of discussion that Nick's brought up with the Salah goal, if they might have to make the offside rule a bit more black and white.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I just think if the ball goes, the ball goes forward, you're offside. If you play a part, surely it just has to be, without there being almost like a change of play.
Yeah.
I don't know. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Then you're offside.
Yeah. I think that makes sense. Also, I have an email from John Smith, and he's been writing into all the Saints podcasts, all the good ones. And
eventually he found ours and he emailed that as well.
Yeah, exactly. And he's trying to drum up support for the Saints Foundation Big Bike Challenge. Do you know about this, Tom?
I don't, but please tell me more.
Okay, so whilst the club does support the foundation, you don't see too much PR about it at this stage. It's only a small bit on social media. So hence why John is interested in getting us to speak to our, couple of thousand listeners that we have and to tell them about the Big Bike Challenge. So he's going to give us a bit of background on the Big Bike Challenge. Every season the foundation plans a cycle from the home of the last opposition to St Mary's, or in the opposite direction if it's an away game. So far we've had rides including Crystal Palace, Stoke, Leicester and Man City last season, and then this season we've got Huddersfield. As with last year, the format will be riding for 3 days, typically 100-ish miles on days 1 and 2, with about 60-ish miles on the last day. Cracking time, Saints-sponsored kicks, make great friendships, get to walk around the pitch at half-time on St Mary's, and you also get to I've completed the Big Bike Challenge ride t-shirt and medal. The Saints Foundation staff will give their time for free, and it's the highlight of the fundraising season for the foundation. Also, John has a nice little bit of personal touch here, because he got involved with it for the first time last year, and taking part in Saints Fit, which is now called Saints Goal program, and he lost well over 4.5 stone as a result, and hence why he's feeling motivated to pay them back by fundraising as part of the Big Bike Challenge. I mean, he raised £2,000 last season, and the goal for the foundation is to get £30,000 raised. So if you want to find out about it, type in the Big Bike Challenge into Google, Saints Foundation, you'll find it there, and you can either sponsor one of the single riders or you can sponsor the team. But £30,000 for a fantastic cause. Also, John, total kudos, 4.5 stone he's lost. I've been trying to lose half a stone for about 4 years and it's still not happening. So Tom, that's the Big Bike Challenge. I'll probably have to tweet out the details.
It sounds very good, and I think we could all do with a little bit of tummy trim.
Yeah. 3 days of cycling, big effort. So Tom, I mean, is there anything else to bring up? Any other business on the agenda tonight?
I don't think so, John. Just onwards and upwards now. Let's do it on Saturday.
Yeah. Oh, I've got an exciting one. We're going to have Duncan Alexander back on the podcast right at the end of the season.
He's nice. I love him.
Yeah. He's going to be doing a statistical dive into how Southampton have survived relegation. He's that confident that he's already told me that's what he was planning on doing long before we're safe. He's
probably the most interesting man I've ever met. So this should be great.
Great. So anyway, we'll have that to look forward to. We'll get another episode between me and you, Tom, out hopefully after the weekend and we've confirmed safety. So anyway, onwards and upwards. Let's do it, Saints. Let's get safety on Saturday.
Look forward to it.
Cheerio.
Cheers.